Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into, well, one of the really foundational texts from the Vedic tradition today, the Taittiriya Upanishad. Think of this deep dive as a journey into some pretty ancient wisdom. We're exploring these huge questions about reality, the self, true happiness, questions people have been asking for millennia, really.
Absolutely. And the sources we're drawing on are quite rich. We've got the Upanishad text itself, of course, but
Hmm.
also some really insightful commentary that helps, peel back the layers.
Right.
This text, it's part of the Krishna Yajurveda. We think it's roughly 2,500 years old, and it's structured in three main sections, the valleys.
Three volleys. Okay. So our mission here is basically to pull out the key insights, the main ideas from each of these volleys, the Shiksha, the Brahma, and the Bhrigu volley.
Yeah, what can these ancient teachings actually tell us about living a fulfilling life now, today?
Good question.
And it starts quite beautifully, I think, with a prayer for peace, for well-being,
Yeah.
and not just for the student and teacher, but for, well, everyone, everything.
That's a powerful way to begin.
It really is. May the Lord protect us. May He make us enjoy our sessions together. May we both strive together. May our studies be bright, brilliant. May there be no misunderstanding. It sets a wonderful tone.
Peace, peace, peace. I
Yeah.
like that. Okay, so let's get into the first part then. The Shiksha Valley. This is the one that lays the groundwork,
Hmm.
and it spends, well, a surprising amount of time on what looks like phonetics, pronunciation, how you say things. Why start there? Why is sound so important?
Yeah, it does feel a bit technical at first glance, doesn't it? But the commentators,
Hmm.
they really help us see the spiritual depth here.
Okay.
It's not just grammar.
Mm.
The elements of pronunciation,
Yeah.
the syllables, the tone, how long you hold a sound, the force, the flow, these are actually contemplated as ways the Supreme manifests.
Huh.
The idea is kind of like the divine is the indweller, the force behind the sound itself.
Wow, okay. So
Mm.
even just speaking carefully with precision,
Hmm.
that act itself can be a connection to the divine. That adds a whole new layer to, well, just talking.
It really does. And think practically, too, back then, before everything was written down.
Ah, right. Oral tradition.
Exactly. Precise recitation was absolutely critical to keep the Vedas intact, accurate. Every single nuance mattered. It shows just how much they valued the knowledge itself.
Makes sense. And there's a really strong line in the session, something about the teacher's vow.
Oh, yes. It's powerful. The teacher basically vows, I will only speak eternal principles, I will speak the truth.
The truth.
And the text even makes a distinction here. There's Rita, that's like valid knowledge, the cosmic order, the underlying truth. And then there's Satya, which is speaking and acting according to that truth.
So it's not just about being honest day to day.
No, it's deeper. The teacher is vowing to only teach what is fundamentally, eternally true, not getting caught up in passing trends or false ideas. It really speaks to the responsibility involved.
That is a heavy responsibility. And speaking of guidance, there's also this idea of bowing to a visible guru, a human teacher, seeing them as a manifestation of the divine. Thou indeed art the visible Brahman.
Yes, that points to the importance of the manifest guru. The idea that the ultimate reality, Brahman, is often encountered and served through a living teacher on the path. It stresses that need for a real human connection for guidance.
Okay. The Shiksha Valley also seems to lay out these systems for seeing the divine everywhere, like connecting it across different realms, the world, light, knowledge, progeny, the self, even in the sacred sounds themselves.
Exactly. It's like mapping the divine presence onto all these different facets of life and existence, showing it's not distant, but woven into everything. There's even a commentary suggesting that certain sacred sounds, like the Viaritas Buhu, Bhuvaha, Svaha, aren't just labels, but aspects of the Lord that actively bring God closer when uttered with understanding.
Bringing God closer through sound.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then, of course, there's OM.
Ah, yes, OM. The text presents OM as referring directly to the Supreme.
So saying OM before an action.
Turns that action into an offering. It connects what you're doing right back to the divine source.
Okay, so this first volley, the Shiksha volley, it really sets the stage. It's about precision, truthfulness, valuing the knowledge, finding guidance, seeing the divine in subtleties.
And crucially, continuous learning and sharing. Svariya and Pravachana.
Right, study and discourse. Keep learning, keep teaching.
Precisely. It's that ongoing practice, weaving study and teaching into life that really prepares you for the deeper understanding that follows.
Which brings us perfectly to part two, the Brahma Valley. This is described as the heart of the Upanishad, right? Where we get the direct knowledge of Brahman.
Exactly. We move from the foundations, the preparations, into the core subject itself. And it kicks off with this absolutely fundamental definition. Brahman is the truth, knowledge, and infinity. Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam.
Okay, Satyam, Janam, Anantam, truth, knowledge, infinity. Let's unpack that because it sounds simple, but I bet it's not. Are these just qualities of Brahman?
That's the key point the sources make. They aren't just descriptions about Brahman. They are Brahman. It's very essence.
It's essence,
Yeah.
okay.
So, Satyam isn't just true or real in the ordinary sense. It's pure existence itself, the ground of all being.
Pure existence.
Jnanam isn't just possessing knowledge. It is pure consciousness, awareness itself.
Wow.
And Anantam.
Yeah.
That's limitless, boundless, infinite, unconfined by space, time, or anything else. So Brahman is this single reality that is simultaneously pure existence, pure consciousness, and absolutely limitless.
Okay, hold on. Not just having knowledge, but being knowledge. Not just existing, but being existence itself. That's a significant shift from how we usually think.
It absolutely is. And the text knows this is hard to grasp, so it gives us analogies to help understand the relationship between this infinite Brahman and the finite world we see around us.
Analogies are good. Like what?
Think of water in a wave,
Okay.
or gold and a gold ornament,
Yeah.
or wood and, say, a wooden chair.
Right. The wave is water. The ornament is gold. The chair is wood. The effect isn't fundamentally different from the cause.
That's the core insight, precisely. The world we experience, the effect, isn't truly separate from Brahman, the ultimate cause. It's a manifestation of Brahman. The source material even connects this to the Bhagavad Gita, that famous verse about how the unreal has no being and the real never ceases to be.
Beta 2.1 cent, yeah.
It's emphasizing that forms, like the wave or the ornament, they come and go, they're temporary. But the underlying reality, the water, the gold, Brahman is always present, unchanging.
And because Brahman is infinite.
It's not limited by the world, the effect. Just like all the furniture ever made doesn't limit the potential of wood itself. The world exists within the limitless Brahman.
Okay. So if Brahman is this infinite underlying reality, this pure consciousness, how do we actually find it? The text says something about in the cave of the heart.
That's a beautiful metaphorical phrase. In the cave of the heart, guha, it means finding it within your own deepest consciousness, within your own mind, your intellect, antakaranam.
So inside ourselves.
Yes, the method is essentially about recognizing Brahman as the silent witness. The awareness, the I, that simply observes your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, even the absence of thoughts, without getting entangled.
The observer.
The observer, realizing ultimately, aham Brahman asmi, I am Brahman.
That's a monumental realization, and the text gives a kind of roadmap for this. The Panchakoshas, the 5 sheaths.
Yes, the Panchakosha Viveka, the discernment of the 5 sheaths. It's a brilliant method of inquiry, really. Think of it like peeling an onion, moving from the outermost layer to the core.
Okay.
You start with the most obvious layers, the physical body, the Annamaya Kosha, the food sheath. Then you inquire deeper into the Pranamaya Kosha, the life force or energy sheath.
Right, the breath, the vital energy.
Then the Manomaya Kosha, the mental sheath, thoughts, emotions.
Yeah.
Then deeper still, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellect sheath, understanding, discrimination.
Okay, body, energy, mind, intellect. What's at the core?
The innermost sheath is the Anandamaya Kosha, the bliss sheath. This process, this viveka, helps you systematically see what you are not. You're not just the body, not just the breath, not just the mind, not just the intellect, and gradually identify with the unchanging self, the witness, which is associated with that innermost bliss.
And the goal, the destination of this journey is called parapraptihi, attaining the supreme.
Yes, parapraptihi, and the text describes it in a fascinating way. The knower realizes all his desires along with omniscient Brahman.
Realizes all desires. That sounds, well, very appealing. Does that mean you just get everything you ever wanted materially?
It's more profound than that. It's not about suddenly getting a new car or winning the lottery, though your outer life might harmonize. It's about the very nature of desire being transformed and fulfilled through the realization of the all-knowing Brahman. When you realize your unity with the infinite omniscient source, the limited ego-driven desires dissolve or are seen in a totally new light. Fulfillment comes from aligning with that ultimate reality, not from chasing finite objects. It's a state of complete contentment that includes everything because you're aligned with everything.
Okay, that makes more sense. A fulfillment tied to knowledge. And this ties into Ananda bliss, right? The text distinguishes between two kinds.
Yes, this is a really crucial distinction for understanding happiness. There's what the text calls kosha ananda. This is the bliss associated with the sheaths, particularly the anandamaya kosha.
So experiential happiness.
Exactly. It's the reflected bliss, the pleasure we experience through our senses, through relationships, achievements, pleasant thoughts, or even the peace that comes from detachment. Vairagya. It's wonderful, but it's conditional, it comes and goes, it varies in intensity, and it depends on objects or states of mind.
Oh, 'cause that's the happiness we usually chase. What's the other kind?
The other is Atmanananda. This is the original bliss, the source. It's not an experience you have, it's the very nature of the self, of Brahman, which you realize you are.
So it's not experiential.
Not in the same way. It's not something that comes and goes. It's ever-present, unchanging, unconditional. It's your fundamental state of being.
Wow.
And here's the really amazing part. Realizing Atmanananda doesn't mean you reject Kosha Ananda. In fact, the knower, the jnani, is said to fully enjoy both. They appreciate the momentary joys of life even more, perhaps, but without being dependent on them or devastated when they fade, because their core is rooted in that unshakable, eternal bliss. They realize, Anando Asmi, I am bliss.
I am bliss. That's powerful. And this realization, the text says, makes the knower fearless, is no more afraid of anything. Why does knowing this bliss eliminate fear?
It's a direct consequence of understanding your true identity. Fear arises from identifying with the limited self, the ego, which feels separate, vulnerable, and mortal.
Right. Fear of loss, fear of harm, fear of death.
Exactly. But when you realize your true nature as infinite, eternal, blissful Brahman, what is there to fear? You see the sense of being a separate doer, Kartrutvam, and a separate enjoyer or sufferer, Bhaktrutvam, as fundamentally unreal mithya. It's like realizing you're the dreamer, not just the character in the dream who's facing danger.
So the things that cause guilt, I did this wrong or hurt, this happened to me, they lose their ultimate grip.
Precisely. The basis for that deep existential guilt and hurt dissolves because you're no longer fundamentally identifying with that limited self who is supposedly acting and being acted upon in that way.
Does that mean they become uncaring, indifferent?
Not at all. The sources suggest the opposite. Freed from their own ego-based suffering, they can have immense empathy and compassion for others who are still caught in that identification. They feel sympathy, but they aren't drowned in sorrow because their own core identity remains untouched, rooted in bliss and peace. They are truly contented.
Okay. The Vali also tackles some big questions head on, like, is this Brahman even real? Can we prove it? And does realizing it actually matter, especially, say, after death?
Yes, it anticipates those skeptical questions. It offers several lines of reasoning for Brahman's existence. It argues Brahman must be the intelligent cause behind this complex, orderly universe that didn't just randomly pop into being.
The design argument, sort of.
In a way. Also, it argues Brahman is directly manifest as the life force, prana, that animates us, and as the very world we perceive. It's not just abstract.
We experience it indirectly.
And it's the ultimate source of all happiness. Even the temporary joys we feel are just faint reflections of that infinite bliss of Brahman. Plus, it's the unseen power that enables our own body and senses to function. The very act of living points to this underlying reality.
And there was that interesting bit about creation starting from a sat and leading to sat. How does that fit in?
Right. The text says something like, in the beginning, this was a sat, non-existent to manifest. From that, sat, existent manifest, was born. Sounds paradoxical.
It does. Non-existence creating existence.
Well, one significant commentary, Madhvacharya's, interprets the sat not as absolute nothingness, but as referring to a very subtle primal state of the Supreme Being, perhaps Lord Srinarayana, who is a sat in the sense of not being easily perceived by the senses or mind.
Ah, so unmanifest rather than non-existent.
Exactly. And from this unmanifest state, the sat, the manifest reality, including deities like Vasudeva and the cosmos, emerges. The key takeaway is the underlying unity. The text suggests that making artificial distinctions and separations from this ultimate unified source is what causes fear. Recognizing the unity brings fearlessness.
And there was also a nuance about who attains Brahman.
Yes, a subtle but important point in the commentary. A question arises about whether both the ignorant and the wise attain Brahman after death. The text seems structured to imply a single yes answers multiple implicit questions. Does the knower attain? Yes. Does the ignorant attain? No. Does the knower attain fully? Yes. It affirms that only direct experiential realization leads to full union with the Supreme.
It really does build a comprehensive, quite sophisticated picture of reality and our place in it. Okay, so that brings us to the third section, the Briguvali. If the Brahmavali gave us the philosophy, the theory, this one seems much more practical, almost like a case study.
That's a great way to put it. The Briguvali is like an experiential confirmation, a demonstration of the teachings laid out in the Brahmavali. It does this through the story of the sage Brigu.
Right, Brigu goes to his father, Varuna, who's wise, and asks him, teach me about Brahman.
Mm-hmm. And Varuna, interestingly, doesn't just repeat the definition, Satyananam Anantam Brahman.
No, what does he do?
He gives Brigu a method, an instruction for discovery. He tells him to seek that from which truly these beings are born, that by which being born they live, that into which departing they enter.
Find the source, the sustainer, and the ultimate destination.
Exactly. And he adds a crucial pointer. Seek to know that through meditation, tapas, for meditation is Brahman. He essentially says the tool for knowing Brahman is deep inquiry and meditation. He gives Brigu some starting points: food, life force, senses, mind, and tells him to investigate.
So Brigu goes off and meditates, and his first conclusion is food. Food is Brahman.
Yes. He observes that all beings come from food, are sustained by food, and ultimately return to become food for others. It fits the definition Varuna gave him based on his current level of understanding. He identifies Brahman with the outermost layer, the Annamaya Kosha.
But he feels uncertain.
Right. He senses it's not the full picture, so he goes back to Varuna. And this is a key lesson in itself, isn't it? Don't settle for the first answer, the superficial understanding. Keep inquiring. Persist.
And Varuna doesn't give him the next answer either, does he?
Nope. He simply tells him again, seek to know Brahman through meditation. Meditation is Brahman. He pushes Brigu to find the answer himself through deeper contemplation.
So Brigu keeps going. He peels back the layers, just like we discussed with the koshas.
Exactly. Through more meditation, he realizes that life, prana, is more fundamental than food. Life animates the food body. So he thinks, prana is Brahman.
But that's still not it.
Still not the ultimate source. He goes deeper. Next, he realizes mind, manas, directs the prana, and the senses. So mind is Brahman.
Getting closer.
Closer. Then he realizes that intellect or knowledge, vijnana, guides the mind. It provides understanding. Okay, vijnana must be Brahman.
And finally,
After intense meditation, he reaches the deepest layer. He realizes that underlying even the intellect is joy, bliss, ananda. This bliss is the source from which everything arises, the foundation of existence itself. He arrives at the Anandamaya Kosha and understands Ananda is Brahman.
he reaches the same conclusion as the Brahmavali, but through his own direct, step-by-step meditative experience.
Precisely. It demonstrates the process of Panchakosha Viveka.
And what's the outcome for Brigu once he has this ultimate realization? The text says something about his life changing.
Yes, it's quite significant. It says that having realized the self, which is Ananda, located in the cave of the heart, Brigu becomes firmly established. He grows rich, he gathers progeny and cattle, symbols of abundance and family, he gains radiance, and he becomes great in fame.
So this deep inner realization leads to outer stability and flourishing.
That's strongly suggested. It connects knowing your true blissful nature with a kind of groundedness, well-being, prosperity, and positive influence in the world. It's not necessarily just material wealth, but a holistic sense of fulfillment and stability stemming from that inner foundation.
Inner peace manifesting outwardly.
In a way, yes. The text also mentions that Brigu, having realized this, sees the Lord in various forms as food, as life, sight, hearing, mind, knowledge, bliss, even speech.
So seeing the divine in everything.
Exactly. It reflects that state of realizing the divine isn't just some abstract concept, but is present and perceivable in all aspects of creation within us and around us.
Now, besides Brigu's direct meditation path, did the Upanishad mention other ways, other disciplines that help lead to this kind of realization?
Oh, yes. It presents a quite broad, holistic approach. It's not just one single path. It talks about various forms of upasana.
Upasana, that's like focused worship or meditation.
Meditating on specific divine forms or cosmic principles or sacred sounds like OM, kind of tuning your mind towards the divine. It also mentions homasadhana, ritual offerings.
Rituals, how do they fit in?
They're seen as ways to purify the mind, cultivate focus, gain divine favor, or achieve specific benefits that ultimately support the main goal of liberation. Then there's japasadhana.
Repeating mantras?
Yes, for concentration, calming the mind, generating positive energy, and very importantly, karma yoga.
Right action, right attitude.
Exactly. Performing your duties and actions without attachment to the results, with the right attitude. The text specifically highlights the attitude towards food, honoring it, not wasting it, sharing it, and service to others. It also includes meditating on the interconnectedness of the cosmos, seeing the universe as one integrated whole, and meditating on the divine presence within our own faculties, our ability to see, hear, think, recognizing the sacred within our very being.
It really covers a lot of ground. It's easy to see why this text is considered so profound and why philosophers have spent so much time commenting on it.
Absolutely. The commentaries, especially from figures like Shankara and, as we mentioned, Madhvacharya, really unpack incredible layers of meaning.
You mentioned Madhvacharya's interpretation of Asat and that single yes answer. Any other examples that show that depth?
Well, those are great examples of how concise phrases can hold complex doctrines about the nature of reality, the path, and who attains the goal. The commentaries delve into the nuances of every word, showing how the Upanishad systematically builds its case for Brahman as the ultimate reality and the path to realizing it.
And this state of realization, achieved while still living, is called Jivan Mukti.
Yes, Jivan Mukti, liberation while living. It's characterized by freedom from the grip of ahamkara, the limited I sense,
The ego,
and mamakara,
or
the sense of mine, ownership, attachment.
freedom from I and mine.
When you're free from that fundamental identification, you're free from the root causes of suffering, like deep-seated guilt and hurt. You understand your true nature is untouched, blissful awareness. So while you still live in the world, engage with relationships, experience life's ups and downs, you're not fundamentally shaken or bound by them. You possess an inner freedom, a profound joy.
We've certainly taken a deep dive into the Taittiriya Upanishad today. We looked at its structure, that core definition of Brahman as truth, knowledge, infinity. Satyam, Nanam, Anantam. And we followed that journey inward, through the layers of the self, the koshas, from the physical body right down to the core of bliss, as exemplified by Brigu's meditative quest.
Learning about those two kinds of bliss was fascinating, the experiential kind, kosha ananda, and that fundamental, unchanging atma ananda, which is our actual nature.
And realizing that leads to fearlessness. Seeing the doer and enjoy yourself as not the ultimate reality frees one from the cycle of guilt and hurt.
You know, what's really striking is that this text from thousands of years ago presents such a sophisticated, layered understanding of reality and the human condition.
It really does. It strongly suggests that real freedom, real happiness, it's not ultimately found by chasing more things out there in the world.
No, it's about understanding something fundamental about existence itself and about our own consciousness. So the question it leaves us with, perhaps, for you listening,
Yeah.
how does this ancient perspective resonate today? This idea of finding limitless bliss, freedom from fear, right here within, by understanding this unity. How does that sit alongside how you normally seek happiness or security?
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, is this ultimate reality, this bliss, something we have to strive for and achieve out there, or is it actually already present right here, just waiting for us to recognize it?